Week 14 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few wide receivers I look to drop this week. The first guy, Kadarius Toney of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Kadarius Toney, we saw him had a great flash game with the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 10. But ever since then, once again, the hamstring issues have been a problem. And right now, Mecole Hardman might return back to the lineup before Kadarius Toney does. So right now, with the injury and with him not being reliable, and who knows how much up to snuff he is with the playbook here, he's not a wide receiver I could trust or a guy to stash right now. Still only 42% of fantasy week. So Week 9 in his debut for the Chiefs versus Tennessee, 2 catches, 12 yards. And Week 10 versus Jacksonville had the big game, 2 carries, 33 yards, 4 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. And now we haven't seen Toney in the last 3 weeks. And the hamstring injuries, they're a lingering thing. It could take up to weeks. We saw it early in the season when Keenan Allen, he pretty much missed 9 to 10 weeks here. And Toney, like I said, he's not up to snuff with the playbook. The Chiefs have a bunch of other receivers as well. Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman possibly coming back, and Watson in the mix as well. And right now with Toney hurt and a lot of options over there in Kansas City, I think he's a guy I would drop this week. The next guy, George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So George Pickens, a lot of hype coming in to the preseason. But now ever since they traded Chase Claypool a few weeks ago to the Chicago Bears at the deadline, Pickens, he's pretty much been a hit or miss type of wide receiver for him. Week 8, he had a goose egg. Week 10 versus New Orleans, 2 carries, 23 yards, a touchdown, 3 catches, 32 yards. Week 11 versus Cincinnati, 4 catches, 83 yards, a touchdown. Week 12 at Indianapolis, 3 catches, 57 yards, and a 2-point conversion. And then in a very plus matchup at Atlanta, only 1 catch for 2 yards, so very inconsistent. We know Pickett isn't the greatest quarterbacks, and he's an inconsistent guy. And right now, if you're in the playoff push and a big game, how could you trust George Pickens this week, especially versus the Baltimore Ravens, even though I know they've had trouble in the secondary this season, giving up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. But right now, I can't trust Pickens. And with some better options emerging over the last few weeks here, in 10-team leagues or shallower, I would drop him this week in the third and final wide receiver. I would drop Brandon Cooks, Houston Texans. So Brandon Cooks, he's been a bust, no doubt about it this season. Injuries and just not wanting to be over there in Houston. He's another guy, his ceiling's pretty much 10, 12 fantasy points at most. And this Houston team, they're going to go with the younger direction. And, they're going to try to keep tanking games now to get that first pick overall in the NFL draft after this season. So the last few games here for Cooks, Week 10 at the Giants, 4 catches, 37 yards. Week 11 versus the Commanders, 3 catches, 70 yards. And Week 12 at the Dolphins in that one, 5 catches, 59 yards. And Week 13, he sat out in that ball game with a calf injury. So we don't know if he's going to play at Dallas. That's a tough matchup anyway. And right now, if I'm a fantasy owner, I'm cutting Brandon Cooks loose. You just can't count on him, especially this late in the season. And what is he really going to do on your bench anyway? So that's a few wide receivers I look to drop here for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.